The free fall continues for the Memphis Grizzlies. Not a good way to end a homestand. Another defeat, this time at the hands of the Golden State Warriors. I'm going to break that game down, plus talk about my early takeaways on Tuomas Iisalo and some early candidates for the head coaching job in Memphis. Stick around. It's going to be a fun one on Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this Wednesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, your host, Memphis Grizzlies contributor over for Grizzlied, and of course, the co-host of this here podcast, Locked On Grizzlies. No DeMichael Cole, getting a well-deserved day off after a busy home and home back-to-back for him. Happy to be here with you for the next 30 minutes or so talking Memphis Grizzlies basketball. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere you get podcasts, we are happy to have you with us. And also remember, we have lockedondaily.com where you can go and subscribe right now to get our free daily newsletter each and every time that it drops. LockedOnDaily.com. I write that newsletter for us every day, so you get free Grizzlies words from me. I used to write a lot of Grizzlies words, have been since 2013, a writer about these Grizzlies. So you could check out a newsletter from me on Grizzlies content, plus NBA analysis, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. Go to LockedOnDaily.com and become a subscriber there if you have not already done so. Another loss. And I do want to lead off with that because it's going to sound like, as we work through this episode together, that I'm walking on sunshine a little bit. And I'm not. The Memphis Grizzlies are now the 6th seed in the Western Conference. They were the 2 seed 2 months ago. The free fall is massively disappointing. You're talking about a team that in their last 8 games, they are 1-7. 1-7 in their last 8 games. And in all of those games, they have lost by double digits, except for one, the 7-point loss to the Lakers this past Saturday. Lost by 10 to the Kings, lost by 16 to the Trailblazers, lost by 20 to the Clippers, 21 to the Thunder. Again, the 7-point loss to the aforementioned Lakers, 14-point loss to the Celtics on Monday night. And of course, last night, 9-point loss. So I need to correct myself. Carried the one. They were 1 point away from another double-digit loss there. But the point that I'm trying to make beyond the double-digit duty is that these games haven't been particularly close at the end. Now, the Warriors game is different, right? And we're going to talk more about Eselo and his early games, early returns on him, changes I've noticed, that sort of stuff here momentarily. Golden State winning the fourth quarter 31-22 was a late breaking development, right? That was something that happened with a couple of minutes to go in the final frame. That was a close basketball game. And considering how poorly Memphis started the game, 45 points scored for Golden State in the first quarter, 19 of them coming from Steph Curry. Steph Curry had an epic game against the Memphis Grizzlies. 12 of 20 from 3, 52 points. Sometimes you got to tip your cap to a legend, right? A truly inspiring outing from Steph Curry and a truly inspiring outing from the free throw line by the Warriors. 28 of 28 from the charity stripe. They did not miss a single free throw. That had as much of a role in them winning as anything not named Steph Curry. I do want to stress that. Having Steph Curry certainly helps. But the Grizzlies are now staring down a reality where they are going to be, at best, the 6th seed in the Western Conference, barring a collapse from somebody in front of them. And they're flirting with the play-in, which is a very real possibility for them. Again, considering they were the 2 seed just a couple of months ago, that's a massive disappointment. But this game was indeed different because you had something that you didn't have before. You had a playoff environment. You had playoff energy. You had the Grizzlies competing in a playoff manner. It wasn't good enough. I want to stress that. Giving up 134 points to the Golden State Warriors, that's not good enough. getting smoked like that by this Golden State team is not good enough. But it doesn't change the fact that this game featured greater execution from the likes of Ja Morant. Still too many turnovers, 6 turnovers to 6 assists, that 1-to-1, that's not going to get it done. But you saw Ja getting more comfortable coming off of the prolonged absence due to injury. In this third game back, third game in 4 nights, played 33 minutes, 6 points. You can rock with that. It was another good shooting night for Santi Aldama. There is a number that isn't so good with Santi. A single game plus minus is a flawed statistic. But Santi was a minus 26 in the game. That means in the 30 minutes that Santi Aldama was on the court, he was a minus 26. The counter to that is the guy who had the best single game plus minus in this contest was Zach Edey. We'll talk more about him later when we get to Eselo, the Eselo effect. Zach had a really good game. 10 points, 16 rebounds. Golden State only has one true big, Kevon Looney. Draymond Green, I guess you count as that. But in terms of being a dominant force rebounding, the Grizzlies had 43 rebounds. 16 of them came from Zach Edey in his 32 minutes of play. So Edey doing well was a positive. Morant doing well was a positive. One of the reasons, or two of the reasons, that you could argue Taylor Jenkins is no longer the head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies is not getting enough out of Ja Morant and Zach Edey. Well, that's not the case any longer. But in this particular game, you did not get enough from Ja Morant's co-stars, Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane, shooting a combined 13 for 35 from the field, a combined 6 for 19 from 3. It's not good enough. Desmond Bane shot 4 of 10 from beyond the arc, 40% from 3. I'll work with that. It's Jaren Jackson Jr. going 2 for 9. That tells me that he didn't attack the basket enough. It's Jaren fouling out with 6 personal fouls in 31 minutes of play. That's not good enough for somebody that you're depending on going into this next roster iteration. You'd imagine some change is coming down the road, and we'll talk more about that on future episodes of Locked On Grizzlies. But if we're operating under the assumption that Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to get a pretty hefty contract extension from the Memphis Grizzlies, this kind of performance in a playoff type game, especially one where you should dominate a majority of these guys. Kuminga was not active for the Warriors. Golden State started, you could argue, Jimmy Butler at the 4. Moses Moody was defending Jaren at times. There had to be more productivity from that spot. And there simply wasn't from Jaren. That's not good enough. It was not an effective enough performance from Jaren Jackson Jr. Desmond Bane to a lesser extent. Des only shot 5 2-point attempts. He only had 3 free throws in his 35 minutes of play. He's got to be more aggressive getting to the basket. He's got to be. You need more from Desmond Bane, and you certainly need more from Jaren Jackson Jr. But again, if you watch the game, that was a playoff atmosphere. If you watch the game, the FedEx Forum was rocking. You had to appreciate what Steph Curry was doing. Even as someone who isn't a supporter of the Golden State Warriors, greatness is greatness. And the Grizzlies saw that firsthand. And that is what Memphis is trying to obtain when you're in those moments, when you're in those opportunities for making a statement. You got that from Steph Curry, clearly. But you also got it from Jimmy Butler, 27 points on 11 shot attempts, 12 for 12 from the free throw line, 3 steals, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Jimmy Butler had a massive role in Golden State's win. Draymond Green, Mr. 16-game player himself, only 13 points, 1 for 7 from 3. Memphis wanted him to shoot the ball. That part of the game plan worked out great. 12 assists for Draymond Green, 10 rebounds for Draymond Green. And then, of course, there's the fact that Steph Curry had 5 steals and almost had a triple-double himself with his 52-point performance. 10 rebounds for Steph Curry. Steph Curry had more rebounds than Jaren Jackson Jr. Steph Curry had more rebounds than Santi Aldama. It was an impressive performance for 3 or so quarters, and then the bottom fell out in the 4th. Does that sound familiar to you? It probably should, because that's a lot of what we've seen from the Memphis Grizzlies these last couple of months as the slide has gone on. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to talk about some early Eselo takeaways, things that are positives, negatives, pretty much the same as the last guy, Taylor Jenkins. We'll talk about all that next. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Prize Picks. Baseball season is in full swing, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. This week, I'm picking my boy James Wood of the Washington Nationals for more than 1 home run, and my boy CJ Abrams for more than 1 stolen base. It's that easy. You set a lineup, it takes less than 60 seconds, and when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So are in the business of trying to win, right? That is what the purpose of NBA basketball is, and professional sports at large. You're trying to win the game. Moral victories are not something to be celebrated, but given the way that this season has played out for Memphis, and given the way the last, week has gone for the Memphis Grizzlies in particular, Tuomas Iisalo is doing some things that are interesting at the very least. First and foremost, he treated that Warriors game in particular like it was a playoff game, because for all intents and purposes, it was. It was the battle for that 5 seed in the Western Conference. Memphis lost, but the Grizzlies deployed an 8-man rotation. Go back and look at the box score for that game. Santi Aldama, Luke Kennard, Scottie Pippen Jr. Those are the guys that played 20 or more minutes off the bench. Marvin Bagley only played 3 minutes, and that was when foul trouble was a concern early on in the game for Zach Edey in particular. But it was an 8-man rotation for the most part. Jaren Jackson Jr., Jalen Wells, Zach Edey, John Morant, Desmond Bane, and then the 3 names I mentioned a moment ago, Aldama, Kennard, and Pippen Jr. Take Luke Kennard out of the equation, because he's not going to be here next season. Luke Kennard, 1 for 3 from the field, only took 3 threes in 22 minutes of play, 5 assists to 1 turnover. Luke gets a bad rep. I do think that he did some good things for the Grizzlies in this game to help them in their goal of winning. But he's not shooting the ball enough in these high-pressure, high-octane, high-competitive, physical defense type games. He's going to cost too much. We wish you well, Luke Kennard. But look at those other 7 guys. Jackson Jr., Wells, Edey, Morant, Bane, Pippen Jr., Aldama. Outside of Santi Aldama, who enters restricted free agency, all of those guys are under contract next season. And Memphis can either re-sign Santi on their own or match any offer that Aldama gets on the open market. And the trade of Marcus Smart makes signing both Jaren and Santi back plausible for the Memphis Grizzlies. That is a core that you can do some things with. That is a core that, on top of those names, you bring in someone for the full mid-level exception. You have a couple of second-round draft picks that you can play with and keep developing guys through the G League, which you have had some success with if you're Grizzlies GM Zach Kleiman. If anything, those 7 in particular, you can build around that, and you can compete in high-leverage playoff basketball situations with those guys. You just saw it on Tuesday night. That was the 3rd game in 4 nights that those guys were able to hang tough in that kind of environment. The playoffs, obviously, rest is not as much of a concern. You're going to get those days off to rest up. So for me, my biggest takeaway with Eselo is he has identified his guys. Zach Edey is one of his guys. And Zach Edey, with 16 rebounds, being 7 for 4, 290 pounds, probably should be one of his guys. Now, Edey is not perfect. Certainly not saying he is. He is flawed. I wish he had softer hands, for example. But we have to keep in mind that he is being asked to do things as the center of the Memphis Grizzlies that he wasn't asked to do playing in college and being a two-time Naismith winner, Naismith Player of the Year award winner. He is being asked to be a role man almost exclusively on screens. He gets the ball on the block every once in a while, especially with reserves on the floor, but he's setting a ton of screens for guys. He's doing that more than he's ever done it before. He's being asked to get the ball in positions that he has rarely gotten it. He is doing stuff that at the college level he simply was not tasked with. Zach Edey being invested in is something that Eselo is nailing right now, to be honest with you. Ja Morant looking more like Ja Morant. In the ESPN article that came out about the firing of Taylor Jenkins, the pointing out of Ja being a below average pick and roll player, that's not so much important in terms of the numbers, 0.99 points per shot attempt in the pick and roll, whatever the case might be. I want to give them credit. The data is fair, but it's about Ja Morant being comfortable so that when he is in transition, when he is in a spot to make those highlight type plays, the impactful decision making, he's not able to do that when he's standing in the corner watching somebody else do the facilitation. You have to allow him an opportunity to get into that role. And Ja Morant has most certainly had that chance these last few games with Eselo in charge. So Zach Edey, Ja Morant, those two guys playing better. That was part of the point of the Taylor Jenkins firing. What isn't playing better is the defense, right? And in the 3 games of Eselo, you have the Lakers scoring 134. You have the Celtics scoring 117, surprisingly the low mark. And you have the Golden State Warriors scoring 134. That simply won't cut it, right? And it does call into question where the defensive schematics have gone awry, because this was supposed to be a good defensive team. Over the life of the Taylor Jenkins era in Memphis, the Grizzlies, more often than not, were a good defensive team. And that being lost is a major reason why I felt Jenkins had to go, not when he went. I want to continue to stress that. The timing of it, I struggle with. But if Jenkins had been let go at the end of a first-round exit, I wouldn't have batted an eyelash. I would have been okay with that, even though I am a former Jenkins apologist, a Jenkins supporter. I still think he's going to be a really good coach wherever his next stop is. Somewhere that needs development would be my guess. But the defensive mishaps, the fact that Grizzlies are a bottom third defense in the NBA over a large enough sample size here in 2025, that's concerning because that didn't used to be. And it's not like Brandon Clark has been out for an extended period of time. He played in a majority of those games, a good defensive, versatile combo forward type. Jaren Jackson Jr. played in a majority of those games. So what is going wrong there at the point of attack? How come dribble penetration is so simple for these opponents? Why are we seeing more seemingly open three-point shooters against Grizzlies defenses than we've ever seen? Where is the disconnect on that end of the court? I think it's a fair question to ask, and it's one that Eselo doesn't have a ton of time to answer. The Grizzlies probably hop on a plane today to go to Miami. It's a 3-game roadie. Miami to Detroit to Charlotte. They probably will have a chance to practice somewhere in there, I would imagine. Maybe the Monday before Charlotte, they can get a practice in. But they're not going to have a ton of time to try to set that right with Eselo at the helm. So how do you correct it? To be honest with you, the best thing that Eselo can do is continue to build relationships with these guys and continue to get them to expand the type of effort that they did against the Golden State Warriors. Because half of NBA defense is effort. And if you watch these Grizzlies play defense, the effort isn't just in the physicality of the game. It's in the mindset. It's in the preparation. And you want them to continue to buy into that part of the process. So Eselo has done some interesting things. Ja Morant, Zach Edey especially have had some success. The defense still remains a massive issue. Let me know on X. Hit me up in the comments. How are you feeling about the early Eselo takeaways. He's going to get a chance here to show that he is the man for the job. Has he taken advantage so far? Small sample size, of course, but there's 6 games left in the regular season. And then whatever the postseason looks like, he was right to say in his post-game availability after the Warriors game, Memphis is playing an 83rd game. What that game looks like is going to be decided over the next week and a half or so. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll close out this episode talking early coaching contenders. A couple of articles have come out, Commercial Appeal, USA Today. I'm going to give my takes on who should be considered to be the full-time head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies moving forward. Stick around here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's pretty easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. I love chicken wings, but now I need to budget a little smarter and save a little more cash. Plus, my wife really likes that aspect. Managing money with my partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Go check out Monarch Money today. All right, so again, I want to shout out the Commercial Appeal. Obviously, my co-host, Michael Cole, is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. Also want to shout out USA Today, who obviously is connected to the Commercial Appeal, for those of you not familiar. Lorenzo Reyes wrote this piece. Various contenders for this Grizzlies job. But I haven't really weighed in on this yet because it's still so fresh and so new. And it's still kind of wild to sit here, after the week that has been and say the Memphis Grizzlies need to hire a new basketball coach. But that's exactly what needs to happen. And as I said earlier in the show, the reality is it's probably Tuomas Iisalo's job to lose, right? He was appointed to be the interim coach. He was brought in by Zach Kleiman to be that lead assistant for Jenkins on this staff that Jenkins didn't necessarily want, right? So many of those prior assistants let go over this past summer. The writing was on the wall for Jenkins then. DeMichael and I talked about that. That's usually the first step when a coach is on the hot seat, is so many of their assistants being overturned. Maybe Jenkins should have been let go last summer in hindsight, but he wasn't. They convinced Eselo to come over. He led Paris basketball to a 22-1 record the season prior to this one. Again, this is per USA Today, winning the Euro Cup championship, and he was the Euro Cup Coach of the Year in his first season with the organization. So much of what Eselo brings to the table is dependent on pace. So when the firing of Jenkins happened, Eselo got credit for the offense, but a lot of that had to go into, John Morant standing in the corner. Why would you promote Eselo? Eselo wasn't so much the motion offense that didn't prioritize pick and roll. He was more so the prioritization of pace. And that played a major role in the Grizzlies improving offensively the way that they have this season. So Eselo has the on-the-job interview here. I would imagine if the Grizzlies are able to go 4-2, and DeMichael and I will talk more, obviously, about the Heat game and other games to come here in the next several episodes. If he's able to keep them out of the play-in, if he's able to make a playoff series respectable against the likes of the Lakers or the Nuggets, whoever the case might be, I'd imagine it'll be Eselo's job. So it's his job to lose. Starting with that reality, I've got a couple other names for you. My personal number one seed, the guy that I would like to see in that spot more than anybody else, is Sam Cassell, who currently is an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics. He has been an assistant with the Washington Wizards, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Philadelphia 76ers, and of course now the Celtics. Cassell has been a candidate for numerous other jobs over the last several years. He is a guy that I think would be a perfect fit in the Memphis ecosystem. He's a lead guard, a former lead guard, obviously would have the billing of a former player, played 15 years in the NBA. Players tend to respect those kinds of coaches a little bit more. Not to say that they don't respect Eselo or they didn't respect Jenkins, but Cassell has experienced what these players go through, right? So the fact that Cassell has that approach with these guys, the fact he's worked with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, Joel Embiid, again from the USA Today story, I think that would carry a lot of weight. He's been around a lot of great coaches, a lot of great minds, Ty Lue, obviously Nick Nurse, other places and other coaches. Of course, he's had his connections through his own playing career. I would be very interested in Sam Cassell. That would be my number one seed. I also like Jerron Collins, who actually interviewed for the job back when Taylor Jenkins got it. Collins is only 46 years old, so he still kind of fits that younger head coach vibe. He was a defensive specialist with the Warriors. Now he's with the Pelicans. Collins would be good for Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr., probably reinforcing their defensive acumen. And the defense has been abysmal. So if you want to reconnect to that and maybe find an offensive lead assistant, Collins would be an interesting name for me. I really like, and maybe people will think I'm crazy for this, I wouldn't hate Mike Brown. Another guy who can share with Taylor Jenkins what it's like to be fired in a surprising circumstance. Mike Brown got fired on December 27th, 2 days after Christmas. Overall, 549% winning percentage with the team. Brown doesn't necessarily fit exactly with what the current philosophy is of the roster, but he has won and he has had success in a place like Memphis and Sacramento. And again, he prioritizes defense. I like the idea of Mike Brown. There's some other names that are mentioned here. Frank Vogel, Scotty Brooks. Yeah, maybe. I think there's possibility there. I do think that Memphis going the lesser known assistant route makes more sense. You know, folks like to talk about Dan Hurley coming out of UConn, turned down the Lakers last year. Do I really think he's going to choose Memphis? Not really. So the sexy names like Hurley or Jeff Van Gundy, it's probably the only time that sexy and Jeff Van Gundy have been uttered in the same sentence. But those bigger types of names probably aren't coming to Memphis, right? So somebody like Sam Cassell, I think that while that is an attractive name, that's not somebody that would stick their nose up at an opportunity potentially. I think that in the right system, he would have a lot of success. And I think Memphis really fits that mold. Somebody else that I really like, David Adelman, the son of Rick Adelman, obviously comes from good NBA coaching stock. He's with the Nuggets right now, has had a really good success working with bigs like Nikola Jokic. I think Adelman could also be an interesting fit. So let me know what you guys think, okay? Again, I think Eselo has the inside hand. Obviously, it's his job to kind of lose at this stage, but I really like Sam Cassell. I can be talked into Sam Cassell. I like Collins in New Orleans. I really like Mike Brown. I really like the idea of Adelman. There's options. There's possibilities there, and I really do hope that even coming out of this, if Eselo is going to be the guy, I hope they take advantage and take interviews and talk with guys, get insight into what they perceive the Grizzlies' strengths and weaknesses being and how they can address them, and then make Eselo the hire if necessary there at the end. That is my hope as that process plays out. But obviously, we're not ready for that process just yet. There's still at least 7 more games, 6 regular season, and at least 1 play-in game, depending on how bad it goes over the course of the rest of these contests for Memphis to play over these next couple of weeks. The next time we'll see you guys here on Locked On Grizzlies is our Thursday edition of the show. DeMichael and I will be back together. We'll talk Grizzlies Heat. I'll get DeMichael's kind of thoughts on the overall state of things. I had an idea that I talked to him about regarding the play-in that I'm kind of curious. I would love to get his take on it. We'll talk more play-in possibilities because that's very real for Memphis now coming out of this loss to the Warriors. We'll talk about that and more on our next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Make DeMichael and I a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Also, make sure that you're subscribing to LockedOnDaily.com. Again, that's LockedOnDaily.com. Memphis Grizzlies words from me, NBA analysis, fantasy basketball advice, and so much more. I'm Joe Mullinax. Thank you for being with me on this episode. Stay locked in wherever you get podcasts with Locked On Grizzlies. We will catch you right back here tomorrow. See ya.